into the Skinny Podcast, the weekly potpourri edition. I'm Richard Skinner, Local12.com digital sports columnist and editor with Rick Broering. As always, it's presented by Blake, the attorney Maislin. We are on the eve of the NCAA tournament really starting, although we've got one night of play-in games behind us. And yes, I call them play-in games and not first-round games. And we've got another night of play-in games. By the way, can Virginia now permanently be banned from the NCAA tournament, Rick?
Yeah, I saw someone else saying that they've been on like the weirdest run of postseasons for the last 8 years. I was like, no, it's not the weirdest run. It's not strange. They have one outlier year. They have the year where they won the national title. That's the outlier. The rest of the years, they've been terrible.
Correct. No, I think that's exactly it. So we got a lot of NCAA tournament stuff to talk about. We got Bengals free agency to talk about. We got Reds and some injury issues to talk about. And let's get right to it.
Yeah, let's start off with college basketball, Skinny. You mentioned we already had some play-in games. The real madness will get going on Thursday at 12:15 with Michigan State and Mississippi State tipping off. I know I'll be at Mo Egger's show at the Holy Grail from 10 to noon. You will also be there, correct? From 10 to noon?
I think so. I've not officially gotten the invite yet because I'm actually doing Mo's show for him that afternoon. And they're like, well, you don't need to double dip. But then they came back and said, well, we struck out on a bunch of guys. I may need you to pinch hit. I'm like, that's fine. It's all good. It's a fun show, actually. It's one of my favorite shows to do, to be honest with you.
I totally agree. So I don't know if you heard me on Mo's show a week or two ago, but I actually did the worst thing ever. I accidentally invited myself onto that show because I mentioned like, oh, I guess with the local teams, you won't be doing a March Madness show this year. And he's like, it's actually Thursday. Do you want to come? So now I invited myself onto that, but
I like it.
I enjoyed the show, so I'm happy to be there. And you mentioned you'll be hosting Mo's normal show at 3 p.m. on ESPN 1530. I'll join you on that around 5 p.m. too. So plenty of March Madness conversation going on with us tomorrow. We'll be around. We'll be watching the games. Only one local team participating in this year's tournament, at least out of the teams that we talk about and cover on this podcast. That is Kentucky. They are matched up as the number 3 seed against number 14 seeded Oakland, which for me is an interesting game because Oakland plays in the Horizon League. They matched up against NKU multiple times this year. They won at Xavier during the non-conference schedule this year. So it's a team that I've seen a lot of, and they've been pretty fun to watch. That'll tip off at 7:10 p.m. on Thursday. That game's on CBS. So Skinny, I'll start with this. UK's meltdown in the SEC tournament against Texas A&M felt pretty similar to what we've seen from this team throughout different portions of this season. But does that loss right there and the way they played, does it make you feel better or worse about their chances this week?
I'm going to say better only because they seem to bounce back from those kind of situations pretty darn well. For whatever reason, A&M's just a bad matchup for them, and that happens sometimes. Giving up 97 points is a little distressing. And that's where, in the bracket Kentucky's in, I truthfully, and I mean this sincerely, I think they couldn't have asked for a better draw in a region than the one that they got.
I agree.
That being said, I can also make a case for them bowing out on Thursday because they don't defend. I mean, it's not just a matter of not defending Texas A&M. It's literally it's not even defending UNC Wilmington, and I don't know how that gets fixed. The thing is, though, they're just so damn elite offensively that it gets them past games like this, in my opinion.
It's funny you said it makes you feel a little bit better because that was the exact thought I had. Now, maybe not better about their chances of winning a national title. In fact, I would say I feel worse about that because I was starting to feel like maybe this team actually is turning a corner. Maybe they are playing like the title contenders we thought they could be at the beginning of the year. And then they show up like they did in the SEC tournament. It's like, okay, no, they're still inconsistent. They're still capable of having that stinker of a game. But I was concerned about them potentially getting upset again in the first round. And now that they lost this game to Texas A&M, like you said, it kind of feels like those losses throughout the year have been wake-up calls for them. Usually they've had the bad game, then they've turned around and they've played really well for the next game or next 2 or 3 games even. So I think at least for the first round, maybe in first 2 rounds, the loss to Texas A&M makes me feel better for Kentucky.
Yeah, can I say something too about conference tournaments, by the way? And
absolutely.
And maybe I should have known this already, but it felt like this year especially. I think it shows you, other than teams trying to get automatic bids that need to win the tournament to get an automatic bid, NC State, the one bid leagues, etc. For the teams and seeding purposes, the rest, I don't think it means a damn thing. I think Kentucky went into the SEC tournament on the 3 line. They lost their first game and didn't get bumped off the 3 line. I think Auburn went into the SEC tournament. I thought they were borderline 3-4, and I would have thought what they did would have swapped them and Kentucky out with the 3-4 line. It did absolutely nothing for Auburn's resume. Am I wrong in thinking this?
I don't know how many times the committee has to tell us after they reveal the bracket that we basically had all the seeds figured out the first day before Wednesday, before all these conference tournament games were played, and we won't listen to them. Every year we go into the tournament time and we ask questions like, what does this team need to do in their postseason tournament to get an at-large bid? And Skinny, the answer is it doesn't matter. It's already been decided. You earn your at-large bid during the regular season. It's been that way for years. They continuously tell us it's that way. And yet we convince ourselves every year when tournament time comes around that, well, no, if you just win this game and that game in your conference tournament, it'll put you over the top.
But here's the thing to me, though, is and we hear this all the time, it's your entire resume, right? That's what you're supposed to be looking at, the entire resume. And that would include the conference tournament. It does go on your record. It does go on your resume. But to your point, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. I think UC fans, believe it or not, convince themselves if they have gotten to the Big 12 championship game because they would have gotten a quad one Kansas, a quad one Iowa State, a quad one Baylor, that it was going to do enough to elevate them in.
And they had no chance.
No chance. None.
Yeah, they were not even in the conversation. And they weren't going to be. Again,
I don't think they were either, Rick, but I get what they're thinking of. Hey, that's 3 quad one wins in a row. That should count for something. Well,
if you're not in the bubble picture on Wednesday, you have no shot. You're not moving up and leaping multiple teams. And that's been clear for multiple years. Yet every year we talk about it like it's going to change and it's going to be different this year. And I don't know why we do that. Let's get back to Kentucky, Oakland. Yes, the matchup between these two teams. I think there are a couple things to look at. The first is Kentucky is number 1 in the country in 3-point shooting percentage at over 41% on the year. Oakland plays a zone defense and they give up a lot of 3-point shots. Now they don't give up a high percentage necessarily, but they let teams get off a lot of 3-point looks. So that's one thing I'm definitely going to have my eye on is how does Kentucky shoot the 3? Because they've been shooting it pretty well all year. And that's something that Oakland can definitely struggle with. And then the other thing that I wonder about, Skinny, is the guy for Oakland is Horizon League Player of the Year, Trey Townsend. He's a 6'6", maybe 6'7" power forward who's not an outside shooter. He is a low post, sort of put his shoulder into you and score with a little hook shot or a mid-range jumper face up and get offensive rebounds and kind of power through you. He's going to be going up against a team in Kentucky that has Onyenso, Big Z, Trey Mitchell, even Aaron Bradshaw, who's over 7 feet and blocks some shots.
And you know who's a good defensive matchup for him as well is
Xavier. Yeah, he's a terrific defensive matchup. But I'm just thinking Kentucky is the number 1 team in block shot percentage in the country too. That's not a great matchup for Trey Townsend, I wouldn't think. So if I'm a Kentucky fan, those are the 2 things that I'm really looking at in this matchup.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's one thing to say, well, maybe Kentucky has an off night shooting. Yeah, maybe one of them do, but not all of those snipers are going to have an off night. They're just not. And the thing is, you can surround 3 snipers on the perimeter and Dillingham, Reeves, and Shepard. And I've been clamoring for those 3 to play more minutes together for a long, long time. And maybe this is the time that they will. I just don't think that Oakland can cross their fingers and hope all 3 of those guys have an off night on the same night. And even then, the pace of play that Kentucky plays with, if they're getting stops on Oakland, and they're not great at getting stops, they're so elite at getting out on the break that they're going to score fast break points too. So truth be told, while any matchup for Kentucky makes you squeamish from a defensive standpoint, this just feels like this is a pretty good matchup for them overall.
Yeah, Oakland isn't a team that like locks you up and matches up to you and like we're going to have like a really good defensive matchup for this guy. They play this kind of ambiguous zone defense to where they're just kind of getting in your way and hoping you take some quick jumpers and make mistakes on offense more than anything. Now, they're not bad defensively, but they're just not real disciplined or playing like a real tight defense necessarily. So I think for Kentucky's guards, they're going to have a fine time against that. And then everyone keeps talking about Kentucky's defense. So it's like, well, Oakland, Trey Townsend may score 30. And again, I don't think it's a good matchup for Trey Townsend. But the 2 guys that could change this game and make Kentucky fans worried are number 3 and number 11, the 2 white guys for Oakland, Jack Golke and Blake Lampman. Those 2 can shoot the lights out and they can change the game in a hurry. So if you're a Kentucky fan and you're wondering about who to watch for, you're going to hear a lot about Trey Townsend. I don't think that's the guy you have to worry about. I'd be much more worried about the 2 shooters on the perimeter and Kentucky not matching to them early. Because if Jack Golke gets hot, he'll hit 6 or 7 threes in a game against you.
Yeah, and for those wondering, man, is Kentucky going to play stressed or with pressure because of the last few NCAA tournament flameouts? A bunch of these guys haven't been a part of that. I mean, they just haven't been. So, I know Antonio Reeves kind of was the focal point of the flameout last year for the way he shot the ball or really didn't shoot the ball against Kansas State, but he was kind of the only shooter last year. And again, that's the big difference.
Yeah, I think so too. I think this is actually a pretty good matchup for Kentucky, all things considered, in the first round. And it should be. It's a 3 versus 14 seeded game. But sometimes you look at those games, and especially with like a team like this year's Kentucky's team, where they have a major deficiency on defense, you start wondering, like, is this an okay matchup for them? And I think this one works out pretty well. What were your thoughts on the rest of Kentucky's draw, Skinny?
I mean, I like it. I don't think much of Texas Tech or NC State. Florida obviously has been a tough matchup for them. They're out of the other side of this bottom portion of the bracket. They're the 7 seed. And I think they have a legit chance to get past Marquette, because even if Kolek's back, is he compromised? What kind of shape is he in? I credit to them for marching to the Big East championship game. But they don't seem to be like a team that blows you away. And so I think it's a great draw for them. And then I think if they got to the finals against Houston, I don't know if Houston scores enough. I just don't. As much as I love the way I love them. I do. You know me. I love physical basketball. I love guys sticking their chest in you and not letting you go by. I just don't know if they have enough offense. And so I do. I think it's a great draw for Kentucky. I mean, I will tell you this, Rick. I did one bracket. I usually do I play all the bracket games, and I've got other games that I'm in where you take seeds and you get points. I love those games. I'm in all those. I think if you do more than one bracket this year, you're going to drive yourself absolutely stark raving crazy. I started looking at 14-3 matchups going, yeah, but Moorhead, man, they can score. Could they beat Illinois? They could. Sure, they. I started convincing myself of all these crazy, and I'm like, yeah, you're an idiot. The only constant I had in anything I did, if I did 50 brackets, every single one of them would have UConn winning it, and then I'd have other mixes and matches around the rest of it.
I think that's right. I mean, that's the only thing that feels real. Now, of course, we say that UConn will get beaten like the second round this year or something, because that's how the tournament goes. But when you look at this year's college basketball season, UConn is clearly the best team. After that, I see a lot of flaws with everybody else. And then from a star power standpoint, we just don't have the star players this year, the guys that have taken over the sport. I mean, it's kind of been said multiple times.
Zach Edey to some degree.
No question. Zach Edey's a huge name, and there are a couple other guys that are in there a little bit, I'm not the first person to say this, but I think it's a good point. The biggest name in this year's NCAA tournament, this year's March Madness, is Caitlin Clark. She is the biggest star in college basketball right now, and that says something about her, certainly, but it really says something about the men's game right now. I mean, there's nothing close to a Zion Williamson or anything like that. Zach Edey is interesting because he's 7'4", but he's not near the star and the takeover type player that some of these other guys have been in years past. So I think that kind of lends to all of that as well. And as far as going back to the Kentucky matchups that you were talking about there, that matchup against Marquette is one I am dying to see. It's an ideal, fun matchup for this Kentucky team. It's not going to be a team that wants to grind them out. It's going to be a team that runs up and down and plays like they want to play. And we could see a game in the hundreds, and
for sure,
win or lose on either side. It could just be a fantastic game. And then the next round is exact opposite styles, two really contrasting styles with UK and Houston, and one of those objects are going to have to give in. So I would love to see Kentucky make the run to the Final Four, or at least the Elite Eight this year, just to see those matchups.
Yeah, I would say this, and this sounds goofy, right? I think if you're a Kentucky fan, you'd rather see the 2 seed Marquette rather than the 7 seed Florida, just because of Florida just seems to be a tough match for them.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this Kentucky team wants to avoid teams that want to grind it out, slow the game down at all costs. Kentucky is fine. Like, even if you're going to score 50 on us and a half, we can recover from that as long as you'll let us score 2. But if you want to only play like 25 each half and grind us out and we get down, then you start worrying about this Kentucky team, I think.
Yep.
All right, I think that's enough on the Kentucky side of things, Skinny. Let's look at the overall bracket, the tournament as a whole. Are there any first-round games that you're most looking forward to here?
Yeah, and I got to find it on my sheet. It's McNeese State and Gonzaga.
I love that one too.
Fascinating. Listen, Will Wade may be the biggest scumbag on the earth, but old boy can coach. He's going to be back at a Power 5 sooner rather than later. For those that don't know, he's led McNeese State to 30 wins. He's the former LSU coach. And I don't have them off the top of my head, Rick, but they had 3 pretty good non-conference scalps on top of, look at McNeese State, you got 30 wins. Oh, they played in a crappy league. They did. But they also had 3 out of conference pretty good wins, if I remember right.
Yeah, look, they are a really good defensive team in terms of their metrics. Now, they did play a bad schedule overall, but you're right. They had some interesting games in there and some interesting wins as well. You're right. Will Wade can coach. And as far as him being a scumbag, look, I mean, Chris Beard beat a woman and choked her and is already at an SEC school again. So all Will Wade did is allegedly pay players, and then he didn't.
What you're allowed to do now. And
what you're allowed to do.
Exactly.
And he didn't want to meet with the administration who wanted to fire him. That's essentially why he has such a bad reputation. If I'm one of these high major schools hiring this year, he's my first call. If I'm Louisville, I would hire him. If I was Ohio State, I would have hired him. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe they're just waiting for McNeese's run to be over and he will be their call. But if I'm any of these teams, I want Will Wade. And I agree with you. That Gonzaga-McNeese game is going to be fascinating.
And two 13-4 matchups that intrigue me, and those are always the ones we look at, right? We look at the crazy
12-5s and
13-4s.
Yeah.
Is Vermont and Duke. I think Vermont's really good defensively, especially to guard in the 3. And then Samford, Kansas, just because of Kansas's health being compromised.
Yeah, I mean, they're like, not only is Hunter Dickinson trying to come back and he's been struggling and missed a lot of time, but now their best player is going to be out for the tournament. So, I mean, they're really not the team that they were a month and a half or 2 months ago. And I'm not sure if they were a Final Four team at that point either. So
yeah, right.
I would agree. They are ripe for the picking in terms of an upset. Did you have any other games you wanted to call out there in the first round?
Drake, Washington State. I like Drake. After watching them play, and they're legit too. The DeVries kid's a legit player, a legit scorer. In fact, I've got them going all the way to the Sweet 16 in the bracket because I think I got them beating Iowa State because I don't know if Iowa State will score enough. So again, throwing darts here a little bit, but yeah, I like Drake too. I like Drake, Washington State.
Yeah, from a bracket standpoint, I don't like that these teams are playing each other because I might have had each of them being sneaky upset picks in my bracket if they were separated. I like both of them. And if you are like you are, Skinny, you're a coach, you love watching the coaching matchups, the X's and O's, this is as good as it gets. Kyle Smith at Washington State is a fantastic X's and O's coach. And then Darren DeVries, you mentioned his son, who's a fantastic player. He's a heck of a coach as well. This is one of those games where you watch, you take notes, you learn a little something. And I don't know that these guys are ever going to be at like the highest level of schools in terms of their coaching jobs, but they're always going to have the respect of their peers. All the coaches know that these two guys know what they're doing.
Well, and DeVries listen, Drake's had outlier years here and there, and it seems like every time they do, that coach moves on. And that's understandable. That's kind of what that job entails. He's actually built this into a pretty consistent, successful program over the last few years.
Yeah, it feels like if Greg McDermott, and he was getting rumored to take jobs this year and ended up signing an extension, if Greg Dermott was to move on, it feels like Darren DeVries would be the perfect fit at Creighton to take over there.
I would agree.
A couple other games that I had, you mentioned Gonzaga McNeese, which I agree with. Alabama Charleston, the over for this game is 173.5, Skinny, and I don't think that's even high enough. I think it's probably an overplay.
I don't either. I mean, Alabama, no offense to Pat Kelsey. I really mean this. Congratulations for him again getting the tournament. But Alabama's going to score 110 points based on pace of play. They're going to score 100. Now, they're going to give up 90. That's the thing. Pat Kelsey's team could score 94 because they legitimately are good offensively and still get beat by double digits.
Yeah. I mean, Pat Kelsey's team, they play fast. They shoot a lot of threes. And Alabama's going to let them play that style and get their shots off. And like you said, Alabama's going to get out of the net and then run it right back down their throats with better athletes. You've got the local connection with Pat Kelsey. You've got a game that's going to have an incredibly fun style, and you've got an over to root against, or 4. That's an absurd number. There's nothing not to like about this game in the first round.
No, it's an absurd number, but I think you're right. I think it's absurdly low.
Yeah, I love it. And then FAU Northwestern, maybe not the most sexy game on here, but FAU, just the storyline coming back from last year's Final Four run, not really having the season that everyone expected them to. They maybe should have been more on the bubble or not even in the field, according to a lot of experts. They end up as an 8 seed, which pissed off a whole lot of people. And then now they're in. Yeah, and then now they're playing against this Northwestern team that has one of the most fun NCAA tournament names you can think of in Boo Buie.
Buie, love him.
And not only that, but he's a fun player to watch. If this guy catches fire and becomes like a darling of the tournament, you're going to want to be following it. So keep an eye on this first round game too, because it could be where his stardom starts.
It's funny. 8-9 matchups we always love, right? Nebraska, Texas A&M is a good 8-9 matchup too, in my opinion, because I think they're both really good. But for this, the winner of that game, I just look and go, I'm sorry, you're getting curb stomped the next game. Yeah. I just think UConn's so stinking elite that God love the 8-9. Because like I can make a legit case Texas A&M as a 9 seed beats Houston. I don't know if I can make a legit case that TCU beats Purdue, but it wouldn't utterly shock me. And it wouldn't shock me if the Mississippi State, Michigan State winner beats a 1 seed Carolina. But nobody's beating that 1 seed UConn out of that 8-9 game. Neither one of them are.
No, that's not happening.
By the way, I've got a question for you. And this is probably off the radar a little bit. So I watched FAU maybe against Memphis. It was late in the year. It was a regular season game. And they talked about how, I guess they'd sold out the arena all season long. You actually broadcast an NKU FAU game there last season in like November or December. Yep. What was the crowd? Was there a crowd or did it build up that quickly?
It's funny you bring this up. I love talking about this because they've become such a storyline and people have no idea about Florida Atlantic because they were a dead ass program before last year. They hadn't had any success. No one ever talks about them. They're not in the national spotlight ever. So no one knew a thing about them. And they all just kind of like, oh yeah, Dusty May really has this thing rolling. Look at all the fan support he's built and how people are into it. Like you said, I was there in December. Maybe it was end of November. There was nobody there. That's absolutely crazy. Nobody. Zero crowd support. You couldn't tell that there was a game going on if you drove around the parking lot of the arena an hour beforehand. I mean, there's just no signage, nothing going on at that campus. It is as dead as it can possibly be. And that's why Dusty May absolutely has to take another job this year, has to get out of that place because it is not sustainable at all. He happened to he's doing a great job and he ran into some really good players that he happened to get at Florida Atlantic. But yeah, that's a great question because there was absolutely nobody at their games midway through last year. And then they made their run and now they have been able to sell some games out since then.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. That's a cool story for sure.
It is. Skinny, are there any bets you love? I know it's kind of weird. I mean, mostly you're just probably betting on individual games and over-unders, maybe a player prop right here, but is there any like props or anything beforehand going into the tournament that you see?
No, I'm in a spread game and I'll probably bet all the games too as it is. Maybe not all of them per se, but I'm in a spread game. So I've got a rooting interest in literally every game. We have to pick all the games in this game that we do. A bunch of us put money in a pot, kind of a winner take all thing. So no, so I've got enough there. Like I said, I'm in a pool where you take 8 teams and you get their, if you take a 12 seed and they win, you get 12 points. If they win again, you get 12 more points. And it's interesting because that way not very many people are taking 1s and 2 seeds because a 1 seed's going to max out at 6 points. Hell, you might as well take a 6 seed and hope they win 2 games. So I did take a couple of 3 seeds in some of those. Kentucky was one I took. I took Illinois in another. I think I took Creighton. Yeah, I took Creighton because I think they got a chance to get out of that bottom bracket that they're in the Midwest and maybe even get to the Final Four, to be honest with you, the way the draw is because they would play Purdue. So yeah, I'm on one where we pick 7 players and their points accumulate. So I got enough games going on there. How about yourself?
So I'm pretty much the same way in terms of prop bets or anything like that. I don't see much that's worthwhile before the tournament even starts, but there were 2 things that caught my eye as I went through them. One is UConn to win the championship as of today is plus 360. That to me doesn't feel like long enough odds like low enough odds. I feel like 360 is still enough of a long shot starting on the day of the tournament, essentially, that they feel like the overwhelming favorite, in my opinion. I wouldn't have been surprised if it was like plus 110, minus 110 on that bet.
I was thinking I'm with you, minus 110. I guess in theory, the statistical oddity of back-to-back and all that is what right. I guess they're I want to say betting against. That's what they're setting the odds against, if you will. And
fair enough, and that probably rightfully so. But I would just say, if I'm looking at this tournament and I feel like there is clearly a best team, which I do in UConn, and I can get them at basically 3.5 times my money, might be worth taking a shot there. I don't normally do prop bets on championship winners beforehand, but that one caught my eye a bit. And then the other one that's a little bit more interesting from a player prop standpoint, Skinny, the sum of Final Four seeds over or under 12.5. The sum of the Final Four seeds.
I'll go over because there's going to be some high number that makes some 7 to 10 range number that makes it, in my opinion.
9. I think the stat was, I just saw this last night. 9 of the last 10 years, there has been a Final Four team over an 8 seed, I believe, or over a 7 seed, something like that. So it happens almost every year now that one outlier team makes it. Last year we had 2 of them. This seems like a pretty good bet to get at almost even money, minus 110. I'm going to take the over 12.5. Some of the Final Four seeds. I mean, even if you get 3 number 1 seeds and Michigan State, that's my team I've been hyping up because of the Izzo thing. Michigan State in there, you're good.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. All right, so I'm going to give you a Ken Palm stat that if you want to really if you want to cut through analytics and try to pick who you think the champion's going to be, I'm going to give you the statistic, Rick, and you probably already know it, but I'm going to give it to those that don't because I've done this before and I did it before the show today and I crunched numbers and all that stuff. So since 2002, when you go back to Ken Palm, that's the furthest back you can go in the database. All but 3 champions have been in the top 9 of Ken Palm offensive metrics. All but 3. And the 3 that didn't make the top 9 was 03 Syracuse. They were 14th on offense, 19th on defense. And oh, by the way, they had somebody named Carmelo Anthony who got crazy hot. There was 2011 UConn that was 19th offensively, but 15th defensively, and had a guy who got crazy hot in Kemba Walker. And then the real outlier of all these is 2014 UConn, which was 39th offensively, was 10th defensively, didn't have great NBA talent, had a couple of guys that have been NBA players, but it wasn't a great team. So one outlier since 2002. And if you do that by that, if you crunch the fact that only 3 teams have not been in the top 9 offensively, here are the 9 top offensive teams according to KenPom metrics. UConn is 1. Illinois is 2. Bama's 3. Purdue's 4. Kentucky's 5. Baylor 6. Duke 7. Arizona 8. Gonzaga 9. That's your starting point, right? Those 9 teams. All right, so then you got to look and go, all right, how many of these teams are just crazy slop defensively? Most of them are. I'm going to include Auburn in there at 10. I'm going to reach this out just a hair. Auburn is 10 offensively because they're also number 4 defensively, which makes it crazy to think that they're a 4 seed with those kind of metrics, right? That seems crazy to me, and they're legit good.
And Bruce Pearl can coach.
And he can coach, no doubt about it. So the teams that I didn't even write their numbers down, Rick, because they're just so bad defensively. You got to toss from this group: Illinois, Bama, Baylor, Kentucky, Duke, and Gonzaga. That leaves us with, if I'm including Auburn in this mix, 4 legit teams to win the national championship. UConn, they're number 12 in metric defensively, which is pretty good, especially with how great they are offensively. Auburn, I mentioned, is 10 offense, 4 defense. Arizona, 8 offensively, 11 defensively. And I'll go back to this. The other metric, there have been 1, 2, 3, 4. There have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There have been 8 national champions that were ranked 11th or worse defensively to win it. So you can be, again, if you're top 20 defense, that's fairly elite, but you don't have to be elite. You have to almost be elite offensively to do this. So you got 3 legitimate national champions. If I include Purdue at 4 overall offensively, 21st defensively. That's it. Four teams if you want to crunch metric numbers, in my opinion. UConn, Auburn, Arizona, Purdue.
That doesn't feel crazy. I mean, all 4 of those feel like teams that are in the running and a serious contender this year. And I don't feel like there's a lot of the other teams that you would mention that maybe you mentioned in that first list of the really good offensive teams, they have glaring issues with them. Kentucky being the perfect example of that.
Alabama.
And Bama, another one. So yeah, I mean, I think that sounds about right. Now, the one thing I will say when we do these KenPom lists, the one thing that I think people miss a lot on is we talk about KenPom in terms of where a team is rated, right? So like you're 10th in offensive efficiency. This other team's 18th. They're so much worse than you. You're elite offensively. They're not elite, right? Well, the difference between 10th and 18th or 10th and even 25th might be like hundredths of a point per possession on offensive efficiency, right? So like sometimes the difference between 1st and 10th may not matter. It may be more like the line of demarcation, as you would say, is more like 10th to 11th or 10th to 12th is where the separation starts to happen. So I get worried a little bit when people start using the KenPom numbers of like team was ranked this, team was ranked that, so this team is now excluded. Doesn't always work out necessarily that way, but I think that's a good way to kind of give you a filter through the list and say, okay, these teams have a real chance.
But it does show you that you need to be in the top 10 in offensive efficiency. Again, I've got 3 outliers. Syracuse, not much of an outlier. They're 14th offense. They finished 14th offensive with Carmelo Anthony. I mean, again, you had a legit NBA guy.
And that's a perfect example of like, if you look at their 14th place finish, it might be good for 5th the following year, right? In terms of just the way the points per session worked out.
And in 2011, UConn which finished 19th, again, not awful, not clearly totally elite, but not awful. And again, the one outlier out of all since 2002, there's been one offensive outlier, and that was 2014 UConn. One. Yeah. So if you want to throw these metrics and go, oh, to hell with them, that's fine. But again, every other champion has been fairly elite offensively.
All right. We'll wrap this up by. Oh, you haven't given me your final 4 yet, have you?
No, I've not. So I'll go.
Give me your final 4.
Yeah, let's go East first. I'm going to go UConn in the East. I just think they're elite. I'm going to go, even though I'm throwing metrics right out the window, I'm going Bama. I don't know. I just think they're so good offensively that.
Well, that bracket is a mess.
Yeah, because Carolina is the weakest 1 seed I've seen in a long time. I really mean that.
Wait till you see what I do with that bracket.
Okay. Then from the other side top, I'm going Kentucky, and I'm not doing this with my heart. I like this team a lot. I've made it known I'm not a John Calipari fan, but it just feels like this bracket setup. I mean, I just can't imagine if they, in my opinion, should be in Auburn's spot. Auburn should be in their spot, and what a difference that would have made. I would have had Kentucky going out in the round of 16 to UConn. In this case, I'm going to take them to the Final Four. And in that bottom bracket, I'm going Creighton. I love that. I'm kind of playing the anti-Tennessee game there, where Tennessee, until they can prove it to me and do something in the postseason, I can't pick them to do anything in the postseason.
That's fair. The history is on your side there. I am putting Tennessee. We talked about it last week. My guy John Lomax is a big Tennessee guy. I'm just riding the karma vibes here and going with Tennessee because and I love Dalton Connect. So like, not a bad situation to watch them and root for them. UConn, no doubter. Marquette is the team I'm going with out of that Kentucky bracket there, the top right. And then in the bottom left out of the West, I'm going with Michigan State.
Wow.
I'm going to do the old Tom Izzo game here. And he's the underdog. Normally when he's a favorite, he's not as good, but when his teams are underseeded or when he's the underdog and he's not expected to do well, he usually surprises us. And we just talked about 9 of the last 10 years, a team seeded 7th or worse has reached the Final Four.
Yeah,
one of them's going to do it this year.
I've watched them so much this year. They're just so damn inconsistent.
They stink. They absolutely stink. This has nothing to do with the way Michigan State has played this year. This has to do with one team is going to surprise us, and I hate the West bracket. So I'm picking that to be the bracket that surprises us. And then when I look through there, who's the one team that, if you had to pick one that might surprise you and beat the odds, who's the team that might do it? It's the team with Tom Izzo coaching them as an underdog.
We'll have a Grand Canyon Michigan State Sweet 16 game. That's why Michigan State advances to the Elite Eight, and then that bottom part falls apart somehow. And then they go to the Final Four. There you go.
I would love that. Grand Canyon is a fun fan base. They're going to be. I tell you what, that's not a game that St. Mary should take lightly. That's not going to be an easy one to open.
No, I've got them picked. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap it up with a little talk about Xavier because they did end their season on Tuesday night in the NIT. They lost at Georgia 78-76 in the first round. It's the first time the Musketeers actually ever lost a first-round NIT game. They were 9-0 in first-round games in the NIT prior to Tuesday night. The Musketeers trailed by 23 around the 13-minute mark of the second half in that game, Skinny, and then they stormed all the way back. They had a 34-13 run to end the game. Just couldn't score those last 2 points. They tried with 2 seconds left. They had a scoop layup. It got blocked. Originally, it was called a goaltend tie game. Then they go to the monitor. They wipe the block off. I thought that was a good call. We were talking before on air. You actually thought it was a goaltend and should have stayed.
I thought it was. The one thing is I hate that rule now. I wish they just let it play. Let the whole play sequence play itself out. It seems so wrong that if I had a chance to get an offensive rebound like Kentucky actually did at Texas A&M, they had a guy, it was a goaltend called initially, play stopped because dead ball. Kentucky guy grabbed the block shot and was going to dunk it back in, but it was blown dead. And the game, they lose in overtime. Now, again, games play out differently from the course of that, but it's the dumbest damn rule I've ever seen.
Well, and it was the same situation for Xavier in that game last night. Now, they didn't have as obvious of an offensive rebound right after it leading to a dunk necessarily. So who knows if they actually would have scored on the putback attempt. But, thankfully, the play was stopped right there and they went immediately to the review monitor because a lot of times, Skinny, what will happen is they'll review that play a few possessions later, and then you can't go back to the point of stoppage at that point. They just wipe the points off the board. So in this case, Xavier had tied the game up. They go to the monitor, they wipe it off, and now you've got to inbound the ball and run it underneath out of inbounds play instead of trying to get a stick back there with 2 seconds to go, which is a much more difficult situation in my opinion. So, yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I don't like that rule necessarily. I do think the refs got it right in this game, but regardless, Xavier played terribly. They didn't look like they wanted to be in the NIT at all until Desmond Claude went nuts and started making threes in the final 12 minutes of action there. I guess, final thoughts on the Xavier season, how it wrapped up before we kind of move on to what's next for these guys.
I mean, if you're a fan of that had to be the most frustrating season to watch because there were some really cool highs, but again, it's just that front court was just so stinking awful. I mean, there was times I just yell, why are they in the game? And I'm like, well, somebody's got to be in the game. I guess that's why they're in the game. I mean, they were just, all those guys were horrible.
Yeah. And you called it out from the opening week of the season. You said it right away. You're like, this team isn't going to finish 500. And you were dead right. They finished 2 games under 500. First time they've had a losing season in a couple of decades now. It was like 95, 96, I believe. The first year they moved to the A10 with Skip Prosser, his second year at the helm. They had a losing record. Sean Miller parted his radio show last night, or his radio interview with Byron and Joe, by saying, we're going to be a lot better next year, Joe. And then he mentioned something similar when he was talking to the media in his postgame press conference at Georgia. He seems really confident, Skinny. Are you confident that Xavier will be able to get this thing turned around in the transfer portal this spring?
I am, because he's got a proven track record. I mean, that's the bottom line. And again, this year was compromised through really no fault of his, to be quite frank. I mean, to lose the 2 guys they lost up front, that I think this team was an NCAA tournament team with those 2 guys. I really do. I think they made that much of a difference, because then you have 5 legit players on the floor as opposed to 3, and them all being guards, for goodness sake. So, yeah, I do, because I think he's going to get it right. Now, we talked last week about those 2 guys and what impact they may have this year. I'm even saying if their impact is minimal or average at best, I trust him to go get players that'll make this better.
And I think that's the way a lot of Xavier fans feel right now. Sean Miller has the track record. You put your faith in him. You believe he knows what he's doing. At the same time, when I look at this roster, just from take the coach, who the coach is out of it, and just say anybody who's coaching this team, if Zach Freemantle, Jerome Hunter, he's coming back from an Achilles injury now too. He's not even probably going to be ready by the start of the season, you wouldn't think. So it's kind of hard to put much faith in him at all being ready for next season or being an impact guy. If Zach Freemantle either 1, doesn't return, because there have already been rumors about him potentially looking at the transfer portal, or 2, isn't able to return to form and be the same type of player you need him to be, it feels like there are a lot of holes to fill on this roster. Quincy Oliveri has exhausted his eligibility. He's going to be graduated and gone. Where does the firepower come from if those guys aren't the guys to improve your team next year? It seems like you have to fill a lot of holes in the transfer portal once again, and you can fill some. We saw Quincy Oliveri was great, but some of those other guys were not.
Will the Powell kid be an instant impact kid?
That's a good question. He's a freshman coming in from Centerville High School, 6'6", volume 3-point shooter, pretty good athlete.
Actually, hit the shot that beat Moeller in the tournament.
Yeah, and I know in this day and age, if you're not an instant impact guy as a freshman, then it's almost like, well, where's your career headed after that? Because you're probably going to be in the portal the next year, it seems like, with the way this thing goes. But I have a hard time believing that freshmen are going to step in, especially as 3-point shooters, and be. Now, can he make a difference and give you some minutes like a Dalen Swain did this year? Yeah, I think he can do that. But is he going to be the guy that makes up for the loss of Quincy Oliveri next year? I just find that hard to believe that a freshman's going to be able to do something like that.
Let me ask you this, and you know this better than I do because you follow recruiting far more. Is he a higher rated player than Reed Sheppard was?
No,
he was not. Okay.
No, Reed Sheppard was at one point, I think Reed Sheppard was a 5-star. I know he started to fall back a little bit there at the end of his senior year when people started nitpicking him, but no, Reed Sheppard was honestly, there were points where I thought maybe the national hype on Reed Sheppard was too high. And obviously that turned out to be false. He was properly rated, I would say, maybe even underrated. Any other thoughts on the Xavier season, Skinny?
It actually surprised me they got in. I thought they may get in via that new net rule where, a couple of Big East teams might have dropped out. I mean, the fact that they were an at-large at 16 and 17, I guess credit to them for being a 16 and 17 team getting the at-large.
Yeah, to me, that feels a lot more like there were a lot of teams who just didn't want to play in the NIT, and they were willing to do so. And, I think they wanted to avoid the losing season. They weren't able to do that. They did get Quincy Oliveri his single season 3-point shooting record. He beat out Trayvon Blue. It's 105 3-pointers. So Quincy Oliveri with 106 3-pointers is your new single season 3-point shooting champion at Xavier University. I guess the NIT was worth it for that, if nothing else. All right.
Well, let me give you one more thing here too about what you just said. You know what the best ability is, Rick?
Availability.
There you go. So Xavier was available and they took advantage of it.
That's exactly right. Shout out to the NIT. All right, let's move on to Bengals news, Skinny. Joe Burrow's pocket got a bit wider on Tuesday as the Bengals inked veteran offensive tackle Trent Brown to a 1-year contract. The 6'8", 370-pounder will pair with Orlando Brown Jr., who is 6'8", 345 pounds, to give the Bengals bookend tackles to protect Joe Burrow. Skinny, this was obviously a big topic of conversation coming into the free agency period. Did the Bengals get better at right tackle after losing Jonah Williams?
At the very least, they didn't take a step backwards, and I do think they got better. I mean, if you look at one of the pass rush grades or pass blocking grades for him. He was involved in the most one-on-one pass blocking situations of any left tackle in the NFL last year on a percentage basis. He missed some games, and he had the second best win rate when it came to that. And I think that's a big deal, that you feel like I would stick this guy on an island sometimes, maybe a lot of times, and he'll win his battle. So, when I was doing the position groups, I thought Trent Brown was going to be out of their price range, and he wasn't. It worked out. I think it worked out perfectly for them. Certainly, listen, if Mekhi Becton had agreed to a deal and you would have told me I can have Trent Brown or Mekhi Becton, I would take Trent Brown all day, every day over Mekhi Becton. I think it worked out beautifully.
Yeah, you mentioned the whole thing of him being left one-on-one and trusted to sort of hold his own on an island. As I understand, I'm not going to pretend to be some expert in offensive line play, but because the Bengals do like to spread things out, go 5 wide sometimes, go open, it seems like they ask their tackles to go one-on-one, be on an island a little bit more. Does that seem to be something they really value?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's been probably part of the issue of they want to go 5-man protections and flood everybody out as a receiver, including the running back. And unfortunately, they've at times not been able to do that or do it effectively. And that's why you saw Drew Sample go into the backfield last year as a blocker on third down situations. I do think that that's what they would prefer to do. Because listen, man, if you can get 5-man protections to block stuff out, and sometimes it's going to be a mess because of a blitz.
Sure.
If you can work 5-man protections and those guys work well, I think any NFL team is going to be hard to stop offensively when you send 5 guys out in the pattern.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of technique and everything, and these guys are also strong, that you better be sound in your technique and everything you're doing as an offensive lineman. But there is something to the effect of having a guy this big that is so massive and so strong that he doesn't always have to be perfect. Like watching his highlights, sometimes you see where it doesn't look like he has perfect positioning or perfect leverage, and yet he's not getting moved backwards. You're not bull rushing through him or anything. He's just too damn massive and too damn strong. That excites me seeing that, because that's the type of thing I want protecting Joe Burrow.
Yeah, and without doing a deep dive in New England, we saw them enough. We all saw them enough to know that listen, you're going from blocking for Mac Jones, who God knows how long it may have taken him to process, to one of the elite processors of information in the game in Joe Burrow. You're not asking him maybe to pass block quite as long as he had to do in New England.
Yeah, one of the interesting things that I saw sort of through the coverage of this signing was he has definitely been labeled, because of those numbers that you pointed out, those Pro Football Focus numbers of having great pass blocking rates, that he's known as a pass blocking tackle now. He's kind of gotten that reputation. But I went back and I read an article from last October through the first 7 games of last season in New England. He was Pro Football Focus's highest overall graded tackle, and he was the highest graded run blocking tackle through those first 7 games. So I'm not saying 7 games makes an entire season, and not saying that he isn't more of a pass blocking guy, but he's been labeled this pass blocking guy. He's supposed to be really good at that. The feeling is that maybe he's a little more deficient in the run game, but I also wonder, Skinny, seemed like he was awfully damn good through the first 7 games last year, maybe the best tackle in football. And then he makes these strange comments during his introductory press conference with the Bengals about now he'll be able to enjoy life again. And
yeah, it was weird. It was, yeah. He also talked about, and I wish I had the quote. I used the quote of the culture in Cincinnati. He talked to Ted Karras, and he said it was kind of cool to see Ted in the building on March the 19th. And he said, in New England, we tried to get out of there as soon as we could all get out of there. It was something along. I don't have the direct quote, but you know what I'm talking about. You know the quote I'm talking about, because I used the quote. And as soon as he said that, I literally went, "Whoa, that sounds like a direct shot across the bow at the Patriots organizationally."
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I read those quotes, and I look back. I'm like, okay, so he was playing great like midway through last year. They're 2-5 at that point. Their season continues to torpedo, and now he's sort of making these vague references to how much he hated life while he was in it. I mean, you have to wonder if at some point this guy kind of checked out a little bit. It was like, this thing sucks. I'm not killing myself to block for these idiots or what. I mean, I'm not saying that's how he approached it, but you do have to wonder if there was a little bit of something there going on with the comments he's made. And when you look at the way it's possible that this guy gets into a place where he's happy, he's excited, he's motivated to play, his team's winning, and he goes back to being one of the best tackles in all of football. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. Now, maybe it's a little bit of optimistic thinking here as a Bengals fan, but
he was a starter on a Patriots Super Bowl champion team.
And he was rumored, he was talked about as one of the best tackles at that point in the game back in 2019-ish, 2020?
18, I think 18. But
18. Yeah. And then he goes away for a couple years to the Raiders, and the Patriots bring him back after that because they valued him. So, I mean, I think that tells you a little bit of what this guy is about and his football IQ and all that, if the Patriots like you as much as they liked him. I also thought the Ted Karras stuff was great too.
Oh yeah, about seeing him in the hot tub and all that stuff. Yes.
Yeah, just like Ted Karras being this pitch man for Cincinnati and how much he loves it, how much. I mean, we had those NFLPA report cards come out a couple of weeks ago. I think people are kind of like, oh, what's the organization doing? But then you see comments like this from Ted Karras, and it's like, all right, well, they are doing some things right, clearly.
And I think, again, we saw Zach Taylor get the A grade. I think, to his credit, he deserves a lot of that credit for that.
Yeah, it seems like the players definitely like the overall culture of the locker room in Cincinnati, even if they don't like the actual physical locker room.
And now they're repairing the locker room, so they are physically fixing that too.
That's right. Skinny, let me ask you this, because they've now added a big-time right tackle for this year. It's a one-year deal. Should they still be looking to draft a right tackle with that first-round pick?
Absolutely. I think that's why you saw the one-year deal, and that's what I was going to say. Again, I think he is a bit of an upgrade over Jonah. You're not getting an all-pro level guy, but I think you're not getting worse. I will say that more. But if the first round, and if you take a tackle in the first round, and that guy comes in, and let's just say he just from day one shows that, oh my gosh, this guy's a special talent, and he's going to start. The worst case scenario for Trent Brown, and it's for the Bengals, is he's the backup swing tackle because he's played both. It's not like you're trying to force a guy who's always been a right tackle to play left. And I would say this, if this right tackle, maybe it's the rookie and it's midway through the year and he's done nothing but good things, but look, Trent Brown, we brought him in here. He's a veteran. He's doing good things. And if Orlando Brown were to get hurt, well, I mean, now you could flip Trent Brown to the left, plug your rookie in. So I think it just opens up a lot of avenue of possibilities. So I do think tackle's on the table because you do need a long-term answer there, and they don't have that. And I don't think you want to keep going the free agency route all the time, spending on offensive linemen, because you're about to the stage now, fans aren't going to want to hear this, where you probably got one more year of Ted Karras, and then you're going to have to probably replace that position at some point. So,
and depth does matter on that offensive line.
Question.
We've seen that firsthand in the Super Bowl at the highest level. And when you've got Joe Burrow on your team, those are the things you should be thinking about of like, what if we get into the second round of the playoffs and we go down an offensive lineman? What are we going to do? And hopefully that's what they're setting themselves up for now. Skinny, we talked last week about the nose tackle spot because Sheldon Rankins had signed with the Bengals, and we were thinking DJ Reader might look like he's headed to the Lions. He did end up signing with the Lions. So are they screwed at that nose tackle spot we were talking about with, I mean, Rankins isn't really that type of guy. Do they still need that run stuffer?
It's interesting. T.R. Tart came in, and I heard the visit didn't go well, and the Bengals kind of said thanks, but no thanks. So they kicked the tires on it. He's a true nose tackle. I don't really know what's out there that's going to make them better at nose tackle. I guess you could get a warm body. Maybe you could re-sign Josh Tupou. You got Jay Tufele. I do think that would preclude them before day two is over. And maybe even in day one, if Byron Murphy were to slide there, that they would have to go draft one. I thought it was interesting. I think Paul Dehner asked Sheldon in the press conference we had with him about maybe sliding over and playing that spot. And he said, I've done it. I did it in New York. People thought I was only a pass rush guy. And he goes, we gave up 3.8 yards per game 3.8 yards per carry on the ground that year with me playing there. So maybe that is their plan.
Didn't he say I used to be known as the run block guy, right, or the run protection guy? Yeah,
right. And so maybe, is he a true nose? Is he a true, stout nose? Maybe not, but maybe you're more athletic in there with he and BJ Hill side by side. And again, I do think they draft a true nose. I do think they draft another 3 technique perhaps as well. But maybe Sheldon Rankins changes what they do. Maybe they don't play a true nose. Maybe they play more in the gaps. I don't know the answer to that. We haven't had a chance to talk to Lou Anarumo since the signings happened and since DJ walked. But yeah, I don't think they're screwed per se, but they don't have a true nose at the moment.
Yeah, and to your point, it doesn't feel like you're going to go out in free agency now and bring in an impact guy. Maybe you can bring in a rotational guy who can
that's
warm
well
body.
Said. Yeah, that's well said. But I think they've done a really good job, Rick. I mean, all the spots we talked about before free agency, you got a legit safety. And then, oh, by the way, you added a nice depth piece in Von Bell as a safety, plus his leadership and all the things that come with that at a veteran minimum price because Carolina's paying the freight. You got to upgrade at tight end. You went and got a defensive tackle who can rush the passer. You got a legitimate starting right tackle. About the only thing now for me is probably a depth piece of veteran corner and maybe a depth piece at slot receiver. And so, and if not, I still think they're okay there. I think they've done a great job.
Yeah. I guess the nose tackle piece is the only reason I wouldn't say that this has been an absolute home run, or maybe that I wouldn't say grand slam, because it's really close. They've checked a lot of boxes.
I'd give it a B plus A minus because of that reason.
Yeah, it's been a really good offseason and free agency period so far. There's no question. All right, let's switch gears here, Skinny. Reds opening day is next Thursday, a week and a day from today as we're recording this. We will talk all about it on next week's show. That'll be the big focus. We'll lead off the show with that. But there are some pretty big Reds topics to get to this week as we sit here. And the first is starting center fielder TJ Friedl broke his wrist. It happened Saturday as he was trying to make a diving catch. He'll be reevaluated in 3 to 4 weeks, but there's no timetable for his return. I guess, there are some pieces here, some depth pieces to take up the at-bats and to fill the spot, but the injuries are starting to mount for this team. How concerned are you add in the steroid suspension to Noel V. Marte, a couple of injuries now? How concerning are the injuries here at the beginning of the season before it's even started?
I think very, because I think, listen, we know the talent of some of these guys, some of these other guys, but to me, the heart and soul of the lineup, guys who, are going to consistently do the job you're asking them to do, are TJ Friedl and Matt McClain. And who are two guys that are banged up at the moment? TJ Friedl and Matt McClain. I mean, no offense. I've seen them hitting Ellie in the 2 spot in the lineup. I don't like it. I know the whole speed thing and all that. He's just not an on-base guy to me. Again, I think you're missing the heart and soul of your lineup at the moment, TJ Friedl and Matt McClain, and I think that is a big deal.
Yeah, I think we talk about all this depth, and it is nice to have, and it is what's keeping me probably from freaking out right now about some of these injuries that they're sustaining. But I'm really worried about another slow start like they've had the last few years, where by maybe May, they've damn near played themselves out of the race already. This is not supposed to be that type of year, Skinny. This is not going to be a year where they're trying to play catch up and make things cute by September. So we can say, see, they really were kind of in the race. They're going to be good next year. This is supposed to be a year where the whole year they're in the thing. They're an actual team this year.
I think this is legitimately, if you don't make the playoffs, it would be disappointing. I think this team is more than capable of that. And I think that should be a fair goal for this team and for the fan base to have. So, but again, you're missing a good chunk of your lineup. Now, again, the depth pieces are great. I mean, I watched the game yesterday, the Angels game. It was on Bally Sports, and Spencer Steer's playing second, Encarnacion Strand's playing third. There's days where Encarnacion Strand's going to play first, and Candelaria is going to play third, and Steer's going to play the outfield. I mean, you got a bunch of guys you can move around. Again, looking at the lineup yesterday with Benson batting leadoff and De La Cruz batting second, I don't think that's sustainable.
Yeah, I love the depth. I love the versatility, but I want to be using those things from a position of strength, or at least midway through the year when an injury inevitably happens. But it sucks to be starting off the year of like, all right, you're already scrambling, trying to piecemeal a lineup together. And then, like you said, you don't have a couple of key cogs in the top of your lineup that you're going to be counting on. And I can already hear the excuses we're going to get 2 weeks from now of why the team's only won 1 game through the first 2 weeks of the season. It's like, well, we've been banged up. We don't have our roster. Wait a couple weeks. It's like, I don't want to wait a couple weeks this year. This is what we do every year. They stink through all of April. And it's like, you get into May. It's like, well, am I really going to watch the rest of the season or not?
Yeah. And the Hunter Green start was disappointing yesterday. Very.
Yeah. Are you good with the Stuart Fairchild, Will Benson, righty-lefty platoon in center field for the time being? I guess that's the option, right?
Yeah, I mean, to Stuart Fairchild's credit, he's had a great spring, but I take spring numbers both ways. If veterans are having slow springs, okay.
I don't care.
If a guy that hasn't really hit much in the majors is having a big spring, I just don't really care. I mean, good for him. And he turned on a ball and ripped the double down the line yesterday. It was a good at bat and good for him, but I just don't know. Again, if Stuart Fairchild, to me, if you're really putting a team together, is your 5th outfielder and not a platoon starter on a regular basis. And it seems like that's where they're at. And again, I hope he proves me wrong. I hope he tears it up the first month before TJ Friedl comes back and he's the one that helps keep them afloat. But I don't know if I can count on that.
Yeah, I don't feel great about it either. Now, Matt McClain, we've been talking about his oblique injury that's been a little bit nagging for him. He seemed to work his way past that. He's been playing, and then he dives in practice and hurts his shoulder. Thought it was just a stinger, thought it was going to be just a day thing, and then all of a sudden he's scratched from the lineup, I think on Tuesday. David Bell was saying he doesn't think it's serious. He thinks that he's going to be back in the lineup a day or two from now. But, Skinny, I'm personally starting to get a little bit worried about Matt McClain.
Yeah, and he hasn't hit, and I think part of the reason he hasn't hit is he's been dealing with these injuries. And so let's just say that he overcomes this shoulder, and he's, I guess, to this point, overcome the oblique at the moment. But he hasn't gotten enough bats to get himself ready. And then maybe he can play with the shoulder, but maybe it's nagging enough where it's affecting his mechanics. Maybe the oblique affects his mechanics. I don't know the answer to that, but the fact he hasn't hit either is a little distressing. Listen, I believe in the kid. I've told you, I think he's one of those guys that's going to have a long, long career of just being a really good player for a really long time. But the health concerns are real.
Yeah, and they're starting all of a sudden. They're creeping up. It's not just a one thing. It's becoming multiple things, and it seems like he's constantly banged up. So we'll keep an eye on that. Also, Brandon Williamson will be starting the season on the IL with shoulder soreness. So seems like we have our 5-man pitching rotation to start the year. That's Frankie Montas, Hunter Green, Graham Ashcraft, Nick Martinez, and Andrew Abbott. Any thoughts there on the 5-man pitching rotation to start the year?
Yeah, the only surprise to me would have been if I'd written this down on paper before spring started, was that Nick Martinez moved into the rotation. And again, they signed him for that possibility of being a swing guy. And okay, so the swing guy now has worked his way into the rotation. I will say crunching Andrew Abbott's numbers of his last 2 months of last year weren't very good. He's been this spring to this point. But I think he's based on his overall body of work from last year, to me, earned his way in the rotation. I think there's a lot of truth in he simply hit a wall last year.
Yeah, they almost made it like Brandon Williamson's spot went to him and not Martinez, though. Didn't that seem to be the case? Like Martinez is already going to be in the rotation?
But I'll be interested to see. Let's just say Andrew Abbott has a couple of good starts, and because Nick Lodolo is due back on April the 10th. And again, I'm not holding my breath on that either, but if that's the target date, that's the target date. I mean, in a perfect world, if Andrew Abbott has 2 good starts, I think Nick Martinez's role is that multiple innings guy out of the bullpen. That to me, it feels right. And again, he was good at spot starts for the Padres last year. And, I hope he does that this year, but it's going to feel like, hey, this is a 4 2/3 innings guy. And can I have that guy once every 5 days in my rotation where it becomes a bullpen day? Or would I rather use him out of the bullpen in that long role?
Right. Yeah. And I mentioned to you a week or two ago that I was kind of excited to see Nick Martinez pitch. I think he actually has some interesting stuff. So I'm not too broken up about him getting the opportunity to start the year as a starter so we can see what he can do. But I agree with you that optimally, if you can get everybody healthy, he probably becomes the swingman, long relief type guy. So any other thoughts on the Red Skinny before we move on?
No, I mean, the injuries are disappointing. Like I said, to me, you took the heart and soul of the lineup out at the moment, and I'm interested to see, can they overcome that? And to your point, a slow start would be just horrific.
That was our doom and gloom Red segment. Next week, we will be happy, ready for sunshine and opening day. We promise.
Yeah, Matt McClain in his last 4 spring games goes 7 for 14 and all's right with the world.
Yeah, I did see David Bell say we can get him like 15 at bats in a couple of days at the minor league game, so he'll be fine to catch back up. I was like, sounds great. He'll have blisters all over his hands coming back.
Exactly. Yeah, that'll be the next thing. He's on the IL for blisters.
Yeah. All right. One last topic here before we get into Ask Skinny Anything. And it's more, I'll label this sports media topic, Skinny, because it's not really about FC Cincinnati, but is related to their organization. They temporarily revoked the press credential of local beat reporter Laurel Failer, who, following a dispute over reporting of some of the club's player transactions, according to a story written by ESPN. FC Cincinnati made the decision a week ago on Friday to revoke Failer's credential for 2 weeks. Failer then posted about the suspension on social media a couple days later, and that set off a bit of a firestorm. People got worked up. They're tweeting at FC Cincinnati. A lot of other media types have come to her defense and written things about how this shouldn't be happening. And the ESPN story about this cites multiple sources with direct knowledge of the situation that said FC Cincinnati took issue with the accuracy of Failer's reporting relating to several player transaction stories, in particular reporting by Failer that one player's departure was because he was unhappy at the club. They issued this press release. I don't know if you saw it, Skinny, sort of giving excuses for why they suspended her credentials. They didn't give any real actual reasons. And then they signed it off by saying, in the spirit of all for Cincy, we hope to move forward in a positive manner soon, which I cannot tell you how much that pissed me off. We can get more into that here in a second. But first, I kind of want to just open the floor to what your thoughts have been as you've seen this kind of unfold over the last week in the local media here.
Well, someone who personally knows Laurel and works with her because she does cover the Bengals as well for the Dayton Daily News. She's not full-time with them, but she covers them for them, so I'm around her a lot. There is nobody more professional than she is. There just isn't. So for them to do this, and she was citing some reports from the league. I mean, it was weird. I think this is the whole, we want to control the message. And we see that a lot nowadays, right? Where I used to have access when I covered Kentucky to the locker room. And then it is, well, we're just going to bring a couple players to the podium. And it's become this homogenized thing. And that's what teams want. They want to control the message no matter what. And when they can't, they get pissed off. And so shame on all involved for trying to control this message. I mean, again, this is called journalism, and she's doing her job, and she does it well, and I think she does it fairly.
Yeah, let me say a few things. First of all, I don't know Laurel at all. I'm sure we've been in a media scrum or two together over the years because we've covered a lot of the same things, but I've never met her to my knowledge. So she's not a friend. I'm not sticking up for someone that I know. I know a lot of you guys on the Bengals sides know her well and really like her and respect her, but this is not me taking up for someone that I know at all. I never talked to her to my knowledge. I don't know. I don't really read her work because I don't read FC Cincinnati stuff either. So I'm sure she's great, but this is not coming from a place of like, I really like her stuff. So FC Cincinnati's in the wrong here. I would just say, from a complete outsider's perspective, I read what she put out on social media, which was, like you said, very professional. Just basically, hey, sorry, I'm not going to be covering the next few games. I'd rather not put this out there, but my media credential has been revoked. It's kind of what it is. People, obviously, it became a bigger thing. She put out a little bit more information of like, hey, they didn't like the way I covered these things. That's it. And FC Cincinnati has done nothing in terms of putting out a contrary side of the story, about putting out a reason of why, well, actually it does make sense. She was in the wrong. She shouldn't have been doing this. The suspension is reasonable. They did put out a public statement, and it did nothing to say that she was in the wrong. It basically said she was doing her job. We didn't like that. And we feel like everyone should be in the spirit of all for Cincinnati moving forward. What the hell does that mean? That's not her job.
No,
her job is not to be a cheerleader for you. Her job is not to be all for Cincinnati. Her job is to report on this stuff. And I don't think reporting on soccer is the most important thing in the world. Just like I don't think me reporting on Xavier's college basketball happenings are the most important things in the world. I don't tend to take sports journalism all that seriously the way some people like to. But I also think she's doing her freaking job, and there are some realities to that job. She may have to report some things that you find uncomfortable sometimes.
Oh, dude, and at Channel 12, we lost the Bengals partnership. They're partnering with another TV station, and so occasionally when I'd write a negative column, one of their people would call my boss, not my boss, his boss, our main boss, our general manager, to complain about, you're not being a good partner. I'm not your partner, buddy. I'm not. I'm a columnist, okay? And sometimes you criticize, and that's what columnists do. And if you didn't like it, guy, tough luck. I don't care. Yeah, I'll give my boss's boss credit. My boss would diffuse it, and he'd say it's all forgotten about. And a couple of times I wrote columns that they literally squashed, and I'm like, this is BS, but okay. I mean, I'm kind of like you. I take my job seriously. I don't take it over seriously. But again, I'm not your partner. I'm not on your payroll. You do not sign my checks, okay? So if you don't like it, tough luck.
Yeah, I tend to think journalists as a whole, look, to go into journalism and media in general, you have some egotistical things going on with you, right? Like if you think what you're going to say and write about is important enough for everyone else to read, you clearly have something going on in your head. I'm willing to admit that about myself. I realize that's how I feel. I think people like listening to my stuff in my own head, so that's why I do it, right? We're all a little bit egotistical. I think everyone is. That's why you see people posting on social media all the time. We're just willing to admit it if we're in the media. So all of that being said, I think there's a major issue with media people, especially local ones, some that we work with that take themselves way too seriously, think they're doing like the Lord's work here by breaking news on someone getting an injury on the baseball field. You know, it's like, relax. It's not that important. You're not doing anything that serious. But in this case, I mean, I don't see anything that Laurel's doing wrong. I don't see her trying to draw extra attention to this situation that she shouldn't be. I mean, she is literally just asking to do her job the way she's always done it. And even the thing, like, the fact that what we're arguing about here is she reported on a player leaving, got a little color, a little insight on why he might have been leaving and reported on that. That's what we're worried about here. That's a nothing burger. That no one cared that happened. No one's paying attention to that. Like, it was not a big deal in the city, clearly. So this has turned into a major black eye for your organization, and everyone is making fun of you now. How is that worth it? How did it make sense to suspend this credential when no one cared about the transactions she reported on?
And I'll be honest with you, there's only two sites, in my opinion, I think that cover them on a regular basis, and it's the Enquirer and her.
Right. And so everyone seems to like her coverage the best.
Yeah, right. I don't get it. I just don't get it. And again, knowing her personally, Laurel is extraordinarily professional.
I have a major issue with this happens at the college level more than anything. And I cover college, so it pisses me off there more, but they always complain about their lack of coverage or this, the TV people want to cover the Bengals instead of coming to our press conference here or whatever. Right. And then when it comes to things like this, they get all worked up. They want to, like you said, be the ones who are putting out the message. They want to control the message at all times. They don't want to let you do your job. And it's like, you can't have it both ways. You can't want us to show up and cover all your stuff and be like a PR arm for you, but then tell us that we can't report on things when it's not to your liking.
Yeah, like I said, back in the day when I got a chance to go in the locker room, it was much more enjoyable than having 3 players come out that everybody talked to.
Oh, it's a joke. I mean, last week we had who did Xavier play in their last home game?
To Georgetown, to Paul Butler. Butler.
I think no, I don't know. Anyways, whoever the last game was for Xavier, we sat and we listened. Oh, Shaka Smart. It was Marquette. Right. We sat and listened to like 6-7 questions from Shaka Smart with only one Marquette media member in there, and then Sean Miller, and he talks a little bit longer. He comes in. We get 3 questions with Sean Miller. We have 6 people in there. Me and Joe Danneman don't even get to touch the mic. We get the thing's already cut off 3 questions. It's like, what are we doing here? Why did we waste our time to come here tonight? I could have stayed at home, watched the game on TV, and written the same story. It would have made no difference.
Got his quotes off a radio show. Right.
And yet they'll complain about their lack of people showing up to their press conferences. It's something that irks me to no end. All right, let's get into some Ask Skinny Anything.
Do it.
Skinny, what is the ideal setting for watching March Madness?
Honestly, I'd say a bar with friends. And I do think that's the case because you can watch all the games that are going on with multiple screens. But that being said, a lot of times there's too much conversation. Am I right or am I wrong?
Dead on.
It's both the good and the bad, right? I mean, it really and truly is. Like last year, there was like 6 of us that sat around. Chris Mack was one of them. It was cool to sit around with Chris Mack watching hoops and talking hoops. But again, sometimes it's sensory overload to some degree.
Yeah, so I totally agree with that take, but I also like doing that. So what I like to do is I kind of do one day of everything. Like there'll be one day where I sit in my own office with all my screens going. I am absolutely locked in. I'm tweeting. I'm on my Xavier message board. I'm just like in my own college basketball bubble, paying total attention to everything. Then there'll be one day where I try to meet up with a group of people at a bar. And like you said, it's the chit chat day. You're watching games, you're having fun, but you're socializing. You're just enjoying the March Madness, having a beverage or two. And then I also like to have the day where I go out with like maybe someone like you or one of my brothers or something like that. And it's just 1 or 2 or 3 of us, and we just lock in for 3 or 4 games straight at a bar or at a sports book. I think all 3 of those are very fun. But if I'm going with my favorite, I think it's probably either in a basement with a buddy or 2, watching on like all the screens and enjoying it without all the chatter and all the nonsense going on around us, or doing it in my office. Those are the 2 best ways to watch.
Yeah, the Saturday Sundays of the first weekend are usually pretty good for just being home because the games are staggered out enough. They're you can kind of look at a score in the corner. If it's a good game, you can flip to that game real quick. If it's not, you just keep looking at the score going, I don't even need to flip to that game. And you're not trying to keep up with a lot of them. I do think the first 2 days of the tournament, one of those 2 days, if not both, probably are both bar days, just because there's so many games going on at once and you want to watch them all.
Yeah, you got to go. One of the Thursday or Friday have got to be out for one of those 2 days. Yeah. I agree. I like to split it up. One day I go out, the other day I stay in. What's the meal or snack you have to have every year during March Madness?
Oh, wings go with March Madness perfectly. They just do. It's because again, it's a perfect bar food, right? It's wings and cold beer. And to me, it's no more simple than that.
You got to do wings, and then anything that you can just. If you're at home, staying at home, then it's got to be anything you can just pick at over the course of several hours. It's like you set it out for that first game, then you pick on it for like the first 2 or 3. And then by that 3rd or 4th game, you start going, is that still good? Should I still take a dip of that or not?
But by the way, and what a great promotion. I don't even know why I'm touting this. It's probably I think I've said this before. It's probably my favorite fast food hamburger is Wendy's. The $2 double right now is a hell of a good deal, man. I thought it was going to be like a scaled down version. I had it last night actually for dinner. I thought it was going to be a scaled down version. No, it's the real thing, man.
I'm just finding out about this. What we got a $2 double at Wendy's right now going on?
$1 single, $2 double through April 10th. It's their March Madness special. I kept thinking, oh, this is not going to be legit. This is going to probably be something small, but I'm going to get it. And it was the perfect meal size. And again, I got it with all the fixings on it for $2.
Is Reggie Miller still locked inside a Wendy's for March Madness, or is that?
They've got the guys now singing the thing to Darude Sandstorm now.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. If Reggie Miller's not working, I'll go. Yeah.
You've seen that commercial, right? Have you seen?
Yes.
You haven't seen? Okay, yeah. That's the $2. That's the $2 deal. The $2 double deal.
Oh, okay. I just haven't paid enough attention, I guess.
Correct.
But
by
that's
the way,
good to know.
Speaking of commercials,
No free ads.
I'm over the Reds commercials on Bally Sports with John Cena just screaming.
Already? Good ball had a family.
I mean, my God, that was the best they could do for a commercial, is just have him scream for 4 or 5 different highlights, and then Barry going, "Oh, gotta come down to the ballpark. There's something special." Gee, Nitley.
In fairness, what else is there from broadcast to pull other than him screaming?
Good Lord.
Also, I mean, we could go back to the days of Together Again with
I know. Yeah.
Jim Day and Bronson Arroyo singing.
Yeah.
I don't know what's better.
I think I'd rather have the Together Again.
Fair enough. This is an interesting question. Would you rather coach a Final Four game, broadcast a Final Four game, or watch a Final Four game courtside with unlimited everything?
Coach. Absolutely coach. It's not even, I wouldn't even have to debate that in my head for a second. I'd rather coach one.
Yeah, I figured that'd be easier for you. I'd go broadcast for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. You can't lose if you broadcast. That's the great. You win. True. Every broadcast to win.
True, but I'll be honest with you. I am one that I get butterflies for even the game. I think we're going to win by 20. It's just natural. And the year that the team that I coached with my friend Chris McGuire, that we won the AAU national championship, before each game, I literally would tell him, I say, "Yeah, this doesn't mean much. 2 billion Chinese don't care." And the last time I said it to him, we both laughed, and I go, "It was a championship." I go, "But I really care about this one." And so the one thing I will say is, and my wife actually asked me that before that game. She said, "Are you nervous?" And I said, yes and no. And here's why I would tell you I wouldn't be nervous about the losing part of it is I would be more nervous if I'm broadcasting my favorite team or rooting for my favorite team than I would be coaching, because I control everything. I don't control the outcome. I can't control the ball going in the basket or all that, but I'm in control of the situation. And if it's if my team loses, okay. Again, it's a different feel. It really is a different feeling. And I never really understood that till I started coaching, that watching my daughter play golf in high school and college, I was a nervous wreck. And it came down to me going, I can't control anything I have no control over this. And maybe I'm a control freak. Maybe that's what it is, but it's just a different feeling.
Yeah, no, you like being the man in the arena. You like actually competing. I like throwing stones from the outside and just judging what you guys are doing in the actual field of competition. And yeah, we both do that quite well. Now, what does Skinny? Now, what does Skinny think of the Steelers with Justin Fields as their quarterback?
I think it's even weirder, because here's my question: if Russell's the starter, right? But what if they go 0-2 out of the chute and he's terrible? Do they make the change then? And what's that dynamic become like? I just think it's really weird.
I feel like Justin Fields is the starter now. I mean, if I'm an NFL GM right now, Justin Fields is the guy I want, not Russell Wilson. Justin Fields, I still think has a lot of upside.
I don't disagree with that, but they've told Russell, you are the starter. It is not a competition.
Yeah, but I mean, I think what happens? They're getting a lot of that money paid by Denver, right, on his contract. So what happens if they cut him? Are they on the hook for a lot?
No, they're on the hook for the veteran minimum.
So maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's, you're the starter unless you don't win the job, and then you're just getting cut.
Maybe, but it just feels like a weird dynamic to me.
It is a very weird dynamic. I think everyone's thinking. I just wonder, did they think they were going to get Justin Fields when they brought in Russell Wilson, or was this Russell Wilson is the guy we're going with, and then all of a sudden, hey, we've got a real chance to get Justin Fields. Let's go ahead and do it.
I think it's clear that they did not like their quarterback room. I've never seen a team that's completely overhauled their entire quarterback room to this degree like they did. Like moving on from a first round pick in 2 years that looked like he was the guy, and then kind of didn't look like he was the guy. And then you bring Mason Rudolph off the bench, and he was the guy for a couple. It was just a weird dynamic. I think this dynamic's weird.
What, like Mitch Trubisky was in the picture here, like recently too. There's just been such a strange quarterback room.
But I would tell you this, boy, the NFL, there wasn't much of a market for Justin Fields, was there?
There wasn't, which, I mean, it surprised me a little bit, because not that he's set the world on fire, not that he's a surefire starter going forward, but I think he's shown enough to make me think I'd like to see what he looks like in a real organization.
It's a fair point.
I mean, I like his upside more than Russell Wilson's, that's for sure.
Yeah, again, I just think and maybe Justin Fields is okay with his role of being the backup till he's not the backup, but it just feels like a weird dynamic, man.
It definitely does. And then, of course, you get this, and this is what I'm dying to know. Russell Wilson sends out that tweet that's like, quarterback room about to be fire with the fist bump thing. And I'm thinking, Justin Fields, given the last few, like kind of the era he's grown up in, I mean, he was in college just a couple years ago, while we were going through all of the making fun of Russell Wilson on the internet era of like Mr. Unlimited and all the other silly things that he's done, the videos with Sierra, like Justin Fields has absolutely 100% made fun of Russell Wilson over the last few years. That has definitely happened at some point.
I was going to say, I wonder if there's receipts.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like people would have put that out there if you'd done it on social media, but there's no doubt he's been in the locker room with his buddies being like, look at this guy, Mr. Unlimited. Is he serious? And now like he gets that tweet from him. He's got to be like, yep. All right. Yep. See you at camp, buddy. Can't wait.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's just got to be thinking, what a cornball this guy is. And then we'll wrap it up with, this is another pretty good question. What would Skinny's 25-year-old bio be on Tinder if the app existed back then?
I guess single desperate loser who only knows life through the prism of sports.
What would you have really put?
Honestly, I don't know. I'll tell you what, I don't think I'd ever would have even if I don't think I ever would have gone on a date app. I really don't.
Really? I mean, that's easy to say when it wasn't a part of your era. I mean, I didn't either though. So I mean, I kind of get your point.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I just don't, I don't think I'd be a date app guy. I just don't.
If it was anyone else, I would argue with them and tell them they're wrong and they don't know, but you might be right about that. You may have never even if you were born in today's era, you might not be a date app guy. That might be true about you. All right, Skinny, that's all we got. You want to just wrap this up?
Yep. All right. We'll be back next week. We'll be through the round of actually into the Sweet 16 opening day, maybe more Bengals free agency news and who knows what else. For Rick Broering, I'm Richard Skinner. It's been the Skinny Podcast, the weekly potpourri edition presented by Blake, the Attorney Maislin.